Una L en mi ventana, es lo que eres mi amor. Miles de estrellas en mi cielo, yeah. Estar contigo es lo que quiero. En ti sueño todos los días, pero en el anochecer quiero que no sean sueños, que en verdad yo sea tu dueño y tú seas mi mujer. Ya le dedico la luna a mi hermosa estrella, y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella. Eres perfecta por fuera, yeah, y más perfecta por dentro, yeah. Y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella. Perfecta, bebé, para mí es de cabeza a los pies. No escuché lo de la gente, bebé, yeah. Suena envidioso si lo ves, es que te como besos, baby, me pongo travieso. Es que ese es el proceso, perfecta, confieso. Pero eres más que eso, ma. Tú vales mucho y lo entenderás. Tú tienes un lugar en mi corazón donde vas a estar por toda la vida, corazón. También en mi mente un montón. Es que tienes un lugar en mi corazón, vas a estar un montón. Lo sabes, mi amor. Ya le dedico la luna a mi hermosa estrella, y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella. Eres perfecta por fuera, yeah, y más perfecta por dentro, yeah. Y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella, yeah. Belleza interior, de eso se trata el amor. No existe la perfección, y si lo es pues eres tú, baby. Y si lo es pues eres tú, baby. Por eso quiero más de ti, amate a ti, baby. Que te lo mereces, te amo tanto. Y eso que en unos meses me fleche. Toda la suerte si me la eche. Si no miras como tú me ves. Tú tienes un lugar en mi corazón donde vas a estar por toda la vida, corazón. También en mi mente un montón. Es que tienes un lugar en mi corazón, vas a estar un montón. Lo sabes, mi amor. Ya le dedico la luna a mi hermosa estrella, y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella. Eres perfecta por fuera, yeah, y más perfecta por dentro, yeah. Y no escuché lo que dicen, pa' mí eres bella. Ricky Baker, Neisha.
Some life students, including myself, believe that we are sent into this world with absolutely everything that we need to succeed, everything that we need to claim that which is ours, a happy life. But there's noise out there. Life has a lot of noise, both internally and external noises. So it is our job to find skills to help us navigate through this noise. Today, our guest Khalid Bey is going to share some of the principles that he has applied and has learned for finding this balance in life. But before we get into Khalid, for those of you who are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Ana Gil, and I am a headshots photographer and video content creator. I am the producer and host of Officially Unofficial TV. If you would like to be a guest on the show, you just have to send us an email at officiallyunofficialtv@gmail.com for consideration. Again, if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to write them or your comments. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to Khalid Bey. He's an amazing author, public speaker and business owner, and a dear friend, Khalid. Hi.
How you doing?
Good, welcome back.
I appreciate you having me back.
Yes, we love you here, officially unofficial, and so do our viewers. So thank you for being back with us.
I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Yes. Okay, Khalid. So for those who might not know you and are watching right now, can you please give us a brief introduction of background of who Khalid is?
Yeah. I first of all, again, thanks for having me back. As mentioned, my name is Khalid Bey. I am a author of a number of books, a public speaker, small business owner. Currently finishing my final term as an elected official here in the city of Syracuse on the city council. Been on the council for about a decade, and just actively involved in community in a life for a long time. In the short, develop a passion for empowering others, liking to see people win, find their way through the mediocrity that we often encounter. I don't think there's anything better you can do or any better contribution you can make than to empower others to stand on their own mentally, emotionally, and otherwise. And so that is ultimately what I have an interest and or passion for. And again, I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, of course, of course. Thank you so much. You do a lot of great things, and I have to say, everything that you do it with such passion and intention that, I mean, like, your books just show that, right? And you're amazing. Like what you just said, sharing your knowledge and everything that you have learned with your readers and with everyone who you encounter. You're very generous with your knowledge. So that's really a good trait you have.
I appreciate it. As mentioned, there's so many things that people deal with from one moment to the next. And oftentimes, those pressures of everyday life creates a lot of the circumstances we see today. And when you consider the level of struggle and or conflict we witness, whether directly or through the media, and other ways, you see that most people are suffering in this struggle to kind of find their space in the scheme of things. And so hopefully the information that I share through books and otherwise can contribute in some way to helping a person find, whatever their direction may be.
And that direction you mentioned in your book now, which is the one that we are concentrating on today, you mentioned great principles. And even though we might hear those principles, we don't apply them. And I'm a student of life, right? We have shared a lot of principles, you and I, and we have, it's the noise of life is crazy. Is constant, and it's just learning how to do that is going to help out. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, kind of like, on a television when the channel goes off, there's a lot of white noise.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, may not have any real connection and or reference to us. But then there are so many things that do. And, we struggle to find the origin of whatever this noise is or whatever these struggles are. And that's the first thing, or the first real problem with attempting to tackle any kind of struggle is a lack of understanding about how it started. I want to go and mention something you said, when you were talking a second ago. When you're looking at people going through everyday life from one moment to the next, trying to establish, what it is that they're to do. The most pressing idea on the mind of every single person, whether they've ever talked about it or not, is this sense that there's some reason why they're here and there's some specific thing that they should be doing. And that particular human crisis is ultimately what we all suffer from and what we hope to kind of satisfy or overcome. So again, hopefully, any information I provide, will contribute to helping a person, again, establish that direction.
And it will. We're gonna, like, you guys, the book is amazing. The book is called Now, and we're gonna go into it. There were some chapters that were I would like you to elaborate more on Khalid, if that's okay. And then there are others that resonated with me a lot. And I would also like to have that conversation because I feel it has helped me in life and finding that purpose and actually actively participating in that purpose instead of just waiting. So that's, I want us to share that to with the audience. So we have 4 chapters that I want us to concentrate on. The first one is a polarity one. Go ahead and explain to us. And I know you're laughing because I'm like, Khalid. So going there, please let's explain what polarity is and then the role it plays in our lives as we face decisions.
Well, I laugh because I know that it's a bit of a difficult chapter, but the purpose of a discussion on polar opposites, this is all we're referring to when we talk about polarity, is to bring to the fore what people innately know anyway, but give no attention to. And that is that there are opposites that qualify and or discredit other things, right? When you mention light and darkness, right? You wouldn't know darkness were it not for light. You would not know light were it not for darkness. Hot or cold, you would not know either if not for the other. So making clear to people this idea that there are polar opposites, that there are things that exist that are qualified or discredited by those opposing forces is something that we must give consideration to, something that we must pay more attention to. There's a lot of things we take for granted, going through life. And just that very idea, that very recognition, and, effective use of that kind of information is important. Again, referring back to something you said, knowing something is one thing, application is different. Right? It takes a lot of discipline to, once we understand, to apply certain principles and or ideas to our life, and that's really a key thing we have to be prepared to do. But again, the discussion on polarity is just to bring again to the fore what's obvious or what should be obvious to each and every one of us. Right? You could not occupy the space you were in if it was occupied by something else, right? Physics, 2 things can't occupy the same space at the same time. The very fact that you're sitting in space validates this contrast that I'm referring to. A solid sitting within space, right? So these type of opposites we bear witness to every day. We just don't use them, purposefully in our thinking and in our planning, and hopefully, with a greater understanding, we'll begin to do that.
And one of the things that resonated with me as I read the chapter and continued reading the book is that being aware that there are 2 sides, right? Being aware that if we are feeling something too much, we are way to the extreme. So being aware of that and trying to come into balance is a skill that is worth practicing, because when we feel anxious, right? We feel anxious. We're like, why are we feeling anxious? What is it? We are one way or another. But at the other side of anxiety is calmness. So if we know that we know what we have to go for, right? It is not easy, but knowing this will help out. There's always 2 sides. There's good, there's bad. There are ups and there are downs. And that's something that you cover. Can you please talk about it a little bit more on examples, please?
Well, yeah, the first example to come to mind, which is something that many people deal with, and it's mentioned somewhere in the book about, the balance of home versus our work environment, right? Too much preoccupation with work and or earning oftentimes causes a person to expend less energy at home, right? They're at work all the time. They're working late hours. If they have children, they have minimal time with their children. They often get home, the kids are asleep, or if they have a significant other, the same may apply. Contrary to that, too much preoccupation at home can cause a lackluster performance at work. Concerns about home, being laziness, not wanting to leave home, right? And so anytime you lean too far to the point that you mentioned, and anytime you lean too far to an extreme, the opposite extreme is naturally neglected. Again, by giving consideration to the fact that there are opposing forces in almost and in actually every single circumstance, and understanding that allows us to make a purposeful effort at achieving balance. By not being aware or alert to the fact that we're being negligent in one direction, while trying to focus on another. Could be a very traumatic situation if we're not aware, but to learn as much helps us, again, perform better in both areas and ultimately, find some kind of peace between those two forces that pull us in opposite directions. But that is just one example, and I use the work and home example because it's one that all of us can relate to.
Yeah, and it is true. Once we are aware of that, we can just listen, right? Just sitting quiet, because when there's so much going on, and sometimes, and maybe Khalid, you can offer some advice on how we can do this, but sometimes it is so noisy that we forget to actually breathe and assess the situation, or just observe the situation, not even participate in it, just like step out and look at the situation. When we are in those types of feelings and the types of situations, how do we come to present? Like, is there anything that we can do that is going to trigger that? Or is it just a matter of practicing it?
It is. One thing I'm not is a dream seller, right? So like even when I mention anything like purpose, I'm not doing this fluff in the sky like, oh, we all have a purpose. Let's try to find it. Too many people sell that dream stuff, and people, they read or try to understand their information, and they're just as confused later on as they were when they started. It's very practical, it's very straightforward, and requires effort on your part and discipline. There is no magic pill, right? And so, in order for a person to, when you talk about the opposite emotions of happiness and sadness, right? Even in that respect, I mentioned, I believe, in a previous interview we had about someone asking me about if I was happy, and I responded, I'm paraphrasing, who cares? I said that I'm no more chasing happiness than I am running from sadness, right? The quest to chase happiness creates stress in itself because it's often elusive. The effort to avoid sadness is terrifying because it's often a nightmare. And so in both directions, people are driving themselves insane.
Right.
So to find that space in the middle, to even be aware of the fact that there is a space in the in between where the peace you seek can actually be established, is something people have to become accustomed to, something that a person would have to contemplate. But again, it takes effort to get there. It takes thought, and it takes further understanding of ourselves to get there.
Okay, we have a question, Khalid. Let's. I'm gonna put it up for you so you can read it. Gregory Buttocks asks, "I feel suffocated. I feel very alone, like no one understands me or even cares about me. I am driven to feel suicidal."
One of the biggest struggles, Gregory, with every single person on the planet is always the effort to keep up with the standards that society has set for us, to keep up with the standards that our families have set for us, to keep up with the standards that our peers have set for us. And we often don't have any time to give any real consideration to the principles that we prefer to identify with, right? The things that we deem valuable, not what society or others tell us is valuable. So in our society, whether it's in our families, amongst our peers, at our job, if we're not performing to some standard, then the idea is that we've somehow failed, which is absolutely untrue. That is the opinion of somebody else, right? So the thing is, you can very easily make the decision to establish for yourselves, based on your own understanding, based on how you feel, how you think in life, what's in fact success for you, what's in fact acceptable for you. And I say you do that, and you have the right to do that for as long as you don't cause injury to anybody else, right? And so, when we're trying to, it becomes a question of what we value, right? When we value certain ideas that are oftentimes unattainable because we've been conditioned or taught to value these ideas, therein is where the struggle lies, right? What we're often unaware of is the fact that we can readjust our assigning of value. There's nothing more valuable than you. Let's be absolutely clear. There's nothing more valuable than the individual, not ideas presented by other people, not cars, clothes, jobs. None of that is more valuable than the actual human being. If you don't have any human beings, you have nothing. And on the subject of contrast, going back to the discussion on polarity, Greg, you know, can you, and when you look at these kind of circumstances, right, when you talk about the value of every single human being, the value of every person, it is the human, it is we who assign that value to everything we encounter. We do that. There's no automatic, and I know you know this already, but there's no automatic checklist of things that we have to do to substantiate ourselves. You are perfectly capable, and have every power in you to establish your own measuring system, your own value system, and your own qualifying system. And so, in that respect, as it relates to the value that you contribute, to not only, I'm sure there's plenty of people, in your life and the lives of many others, that benefit and have, see anything you have to offer is valuable and useful for them. And those are the things that we can't forget, So don't allow external ideas, don't allow standards set by other people or society or whoever ineffectively measure you because they can't measure you. I always say to people, Greg, that a person can't judge me because they don't have an adequate measuring tool to judge me. And the same applies to you. Nobody has adequate tools to size you up, and so don't let them.
Thank you, Kelly. That was very great. And it's very true, obviously. And in your book, your chapter time travel. Time travel has a lot to do with fear, anxiety, and a lot of other feelings that drag us down. Can we please talk about time travel? Because
Yeah. I thought of the idea to call it time travel because that's exactly what's happening. Let's take one scenario where something happened to you in your past. Let's use relationship as the greatest thing, the greatest example you can use. Somebody dumped you a year ago and it was a tough situation for you to deal with. You're a year into the future and you see that person and you relive all that pain from that moment. You haven't seen them in a whole year. You've been happy. You've done a lot of things over that year, but you see that person, and in that moment, through your memory, you reinvoke all of the emotion and pain from that time period to the point where you experience the same pain, the same hurt, the same anger, everything. That's a magical performance. And in that same respect, we are oftentimes apprehensive to make decision, apprehensive to take action. We second guess ourselves out of fear of what will happen tomorrow, out of fear of what will happen as a result of the action we take. It hasn't even happened yet. I use one example in the book, I believe, where a guy goes out looking for a job every single day. He gets up, he put on a suit and tie, he has his resume, he's going out, and every day he's touching multiple work opportunities. He's done it for a week and he's received no positive answers yet. He grows a little tired. He say, "Well, I'm gonna take a break for a couple of days and then I'll get back at it." A couple of days go on. He gets back up. He puts his suit back on. But while he's dressing, while he's preparing, while he's grabbing his resume, he's thinking of all the times he's been rejected in the prior attempts, and as a result becomes concerned about the rejection he may face when he go out. And this thought becomes so prominent in his thinking that by the time he gets to the door, he never exits. Instead, he stays home. He foregoes the opportunity to be rejected. And so nothing happens. In the end, though, what's not realized is that the very fear of rejection he tried to avoid, he experienced at his own hand. He rejected himself as a result of what he thought would happen in the next moment. And people do that all the time. Whether you talk about jobs, it doesn't matter what it is. We second guess ourselves. We never push the envelope. We're so afraid of taking the loss or what we've designated as a loss that we don't even move. We freeze. We become suspended, in this shadow space. Yesterday and tomorrow, you can't qualify. right? You can't smell it, you can't touch it and hold it in your hand. And absent historical record, you wouldn't be able to prove anything from yesterday, right? Last thing I'll say is, I know I put one example in there of you standing in one space for 24 hours in an effort to wait to see what a tomorrow is. And despite the fact that the sun appears to disappear and it gets dark as a result, and then it reappears and light appears, there is no real qualifying of a tomorrow, right? Your increased fatigue from standing there for long periods of time and your ultimate waiting and qualifying for some new start is no more than the same moment extended. You're still in the same spot. You're still in the same moment. It's just an extended moment. There is no tomorrow, and certainly not any tomorrow that you're not preparing for right now in this moment. Every moment you get to is this moment, and the next second will be this second. You can't call it the next second when you get there, right? You can't call tomorrow when you get there, because tomorrow will be today, and next month will be this month, right? And this is the thing we have to become aware of, that in this moment, we actively participate in laying the foundation for tomorrow while simultaneously creating a historical record. All of that happens right now. None of that happens in dream space.
You know, it is true. And I just love the way you explain things, right? So like the tomorrow one, I still don't understand it, right? Because I'm like, okay, we're going to prepare today for tomorrow, right? Because in your book, you challenge us to answer a question related to that. So I was like, okay, let me try answering this question. So I was like, okay, so tomorrow I have a show with Khalid Bey. Yes, let me prepare today with this. So there is a tomorrow in my mind, the way I understand it, right?
Okay.
So,
I'll give you an example. You have to build a house, right? And the idea is that you will start building the house tomorrow, right? Now, here's the one thing that's true. This is what you have to consider. In this moment, you haven't started the house yet. When you get to tomorrow, and obviously, let's be clear, I'm speaking metaphorically, but when you get to tomorrow, there still will not be a house. But the interesting thing, if you can avoid allowing yourself to get caught up in the language, what you will realize is that in that moment that you start to build the house, it is today. It is not tomorrow any longer. The idea of tomorrow is not existing in that moment. So you could say here now, oh, I have a show with Khalid tomorrow. All right, we're here. And the bottom line is, absent any activity in the moment, you'll still have a show with Khalid tomorrow. The point is about being active in the moment, active and aware in the moment, not allowing things to be put off too far to where you never take action, not allowing yourself to second guess yourself now. So when you get to tomorrow, per se, you're still in the same spot. There's been no progress, there's been no action taken because you second guessed yourself, right? The whole idea is to motivate the person to take action today, to take responsibility today, to make decision today. And if by chance, and again, let me be clear, we don't live in a spaceship, folks. Of course, we have language for the purpose of establishing measurement and for categorization, right? So today implies this moment, tomorrow implies the next moment. What I'm saying to you is, okay, we know that's an idea, but when you get to that next moment, it'll be this one. If you could get what I'm saying. The
I
bottom
kind of
line is,
get.
whether you're talking about this moment or a moment in the month of January, when you take action, it'll be in the now. It'll be in the present.
Right.
And that's the
Yes.
point that's being communicated here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Khalid, for that. Thank you for that. So, do you guys have any questions? If you have any questions or comments regarding the topic conversation or anything else that you would like to ask Khalid, please feel free to write it in the comments. So, Khalid, let's talk about attachment, because you mentioned back when we were talking about time travel, how, we go in the past and traveling to the past and the future and paying attention to what's happening now. And then we have a hard time, whether it is a good thing or a bad thing, we have a hard time letting go because we're attached to that specific feeling because it might be safe and we don't know what's happening, which of course it introduces anxiety and fear. But how do we just let go of attachment? I know it's not that simple, but please share some principles that you have applied in your own life to let go of attachment.
Every idea is not eons away. It's just a thought away. And that could be considered very difficult or very easy. It depends on the individual. The fact is, the answer doesn't change. It's still a question of what we assign value to. So when a person becomes attached to a circumstance, that attachment to that circumstance is about their own feelings of security and vulnerability in whichever area of that life that circumstance impacts, whether it's a job, relationship, competition, right? I'll use myself as the example. I just ran a election for mayor. We did not succeed, and the incumbent had cruised to victory with a comfortable margin. And one of the questions I was immediately asked when I went to the podium to give my concession speech, and I want you to hear what I'm saying, was, well, Khalid, what do you think happened? And what do you think you could have done differently? And my response was, oh, that doesn't matter now. And I said, as hard as it is for people to grasp or really to understand, I've already moved on. And the thing is, the average person who loses, let's say, a public competition where reputation is at stake, and reputation is a very, very frightening thing for people to have injured. The attachment to it is very much associated with embarrassment. It's very much associated with feelings of vulnerability, having to answer the question, what happened? Having to feel, the pressure of people, asking you, what happened, feeling sorry and sympathy for you, or the concern that people may be talking negatively about you behind closed doors. These are the things that causes a person, and that's using that example, to struggle with the fact that they did not succeed. For example, like I did in an election. And the fact is, every moment of your life is competition. I've been in full contact sports and other things for a long time. You lose a lot, so you don't win most of the time. And so when you learn to appreciate lessons associated with falling short and understand the need to adapt and make adjustment, then falling short for you is no longer falling short. It's just a moment in time that has happened. It has already passed, and I have absolutely zero interest in time traveling back to that moment. It has no value for me in this moment. And this is the same logic that would apply to every single person and every single thing that they're dealing with. It doesn't matter what it is. People get trapped into worry. This is something to consider. Oftentimes, we are haunted today by decisions we made yesterday. And relative to that, we're equally concerned about repercussions tomorrow for decisions we made yesterday. What's true? Neither the decision you made yesterday nor the repercussion in tomorrow is here at this moment. And you can often spend your time, as so many people do, worrying and stressing and living in that very confined space of worry and anxiousness and the like. Or you could take advantage of the moment, whether that advantage that you're taking is to adjust and make new decisions to correct whatever you qualified as an error in the past, or to prepare yourself to reduce the impact if there is, in fact, an impact tomorrow. One big part, and I'll slow this down here, one big part of reducing impact relative to some concern about a decision you made yesterday is to own your decision, right? The thing that makes it very hard to take is when we don't want to take responsibility for it. We want it to miss us. We don't we don't want that to touch us. That's impractical. If it's really something, if it's really a decision you made, own it. Own it and respect the outcome and then keep moving. That's it.
That's I agree with everything that you said. I agree with everything that you said. I actually, and I would like to hear from you guys if you live your life that way, if you are practicing to try to live your life that way, because it does become easier. And this is something that we hear a lot of older people or more mature people say, like, the older I get, the less I give up blank, right? And it is not that the older they get, because we can acquire that level of awareness when we're younger. We can, by practicing it, by reading books like Khalid's book, by being aware of life, of that we are here for a purpose. We came here to accomplish something. And when we're feeling all these feelings of, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, I don't know what's going on, is because we haven't really found that which we're here for. Because once we do, we're going to go for it, and it's going to be our life. So what Khalid mentioned before is that if you are going to be paying attention to what other people are saying, how you should live your life, that's not going to be so great. So Khalid, your point, that you're making about just being in the present, that's what really, ever since you suggested that to me, obviously, I've been studying, I've been following your principles for quite a while now, and I have to say it has helped a lot. It has helped a lot, not only for me personally, but as I share it with my family and with my friends. So if there's one thing, Khalid, and you can give your input on this also, if there's one thing I would suggest, would be that just find out who you are and just live by it. That's it, right? Because that's it. Khalid, what do you think?
All right. If we're really talking about being responsible here, what I'm always gonna make reference to, the thing that we as human beings have been conditioned to do is to find the path of least resistance. That is our habit, right? We don't, if we can avoid any real tension, any real friction, we will. And for the other areas where we fall into friction, is because we lacked the discipline and are unaware of the ability to do anything different, right? And so this is the tough part. This is what makes this subject matter unattractive. And let me point out another thing. It is very easy for the ideas we're discussing here to be passed over as either too simple, inconsequential, and the like, because it requires a little bit more detail in our thinking. Here's the reality: whether you're considering purpose, whether you're considering marriage, job, all of that, none of that means anything if your cranium is not stable, right? If you're not finding that discipline from the inside, if you're not managing your thoughts and your emotional responses, then it's always going to be a struggle to live out your life. You have to take the responsibility for how you think. You have to take responsibility for how you assign value. You have to assess whether the many things you've been conditioned to value actually have value. You got to determine that, because these are the things that are driving you from one moment to the next, right? You have this issue. It's like that moment when you get up in the morning and you go through the day, and it ain't until 4 p.m. that you feel like you've had a wet blanket on you, right? And I'm sure many people have done it. You go through the whole day and you're unaware of the fact that you're irritable, or you're unaware of the fact that you're moody. And you don't even realize it until 4, 5, 6 o'clock. I'm just using that as an example. But when you think about it in that moment, when you come to that realization, you realize there's actually nothing wrong. And then you just snap out of it. Just like that, you're happy, you're jovial, you're moving around. And these are the things that these are the behaviors people have been conditioned to exhibit. They've been conditioned to occupy these spaces, where depression and dissatisfaction, second guessing of oneself and the like becomes like the normal environment. And it's not the normal environment, right? And so the fact is, people have a lot more control over their thoughts and their ultimate expression than they even know. Most people will tell you that they know themselves. I beg to differ.
I agree, because that was one of the first questions you asked me, right? I consider myself to be very aware and all that stuff, right? And then you asked me, okay, Anna, who are you? And that opened up a whole can of beautiful things and not so beautiful things, because I had to deal with a lot of those answers that I was giving, and actually release a lot of things that were actually not mine. And by releasing those, it just opened up so much for me, because it wasn't my values. It was somebody else's values that I had just adapted to. And that is that. Thank you, Khalid. That was
Let me add this, and you implied it earlier. The biggest wet blanket for anybody here is their fear. And the greatest fears we experience, I want you to understand this, is related to feelings of vulnerability, powerlessness. When somebody gets over on you, when somebody puts you in danger of some sort, when you lose something, think about it. It's the fact that you can't control that circumstance that makes you uneasy, right? And so, for the circumstances that you can, in fact, control, oftentimes through how you choose, you need to choose to control them and make them perform the way you'd like them to. And for the many things that may be beyond your control, for example, somebody else's will, you can't control another person. You gotta respect their choice and back up and mind your business, right? And so these are the things that people have not learned to do. Humanity has not learned to mind his own business. Everybody think they know what's better for everybody. Even in this scenario, I offer ideas. If you read any of my books, or if you read them, I always say I'll offer it, right? But nobody has to listen to me. You know, I'm very much aware of the fact that not only do people not have to listen to me, I'm not even concerned if they do. That's too much work, right? You offer it, they use it. If they don't, everybody has a right to do what they want to do. Just don't hurt
right.
nobody.
It is true. It is true. This is something that we do have to learn. It's so beautiful. One thing that I learned also through your readings, and actually your teachings expanded my awareness, and then I started reading other books. But one of the things that I realized was that you mentioned before, okay, so you were running your election, and the first question people ask you was, what happened, right? Blame needed to be assigned somewhere else. Okay, like that needed to be assigned somewhere else. So for me, it's like, okay, it's not, I'm not, there's not something wrong with me. Because before I'll be like, okay, that happened, it's done, I'm done with it, I just move forward. I cannot just stay in this, whatever it is, right? It happened. And I thought that I used to act like I was feeling something about the situation, like, oh my gosh, I'm sad about it. I'm like, no, there's so many more things to do that I can be concentrating on. And okay, right? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Okay, go ahead, Khalid.
Well, here's again in the spirit of being practical, right? Because if we're really looking at the crux of the matter, we don't even have to gas ourselves up about other opportunity, which is what people ask. Well, what are you going to do now? Let's look at what's realistic. You run in a race on a track, you run in a 100-yard dash, you lose, right? Now, you can, and most athletes do, give consideration to maybe how they can condition themselves more and the like for their next race. But some people will struggle with the fact that they lost that race. Here's the problem. Doesn't matter how much contemplation you give it, you can't go back and run that race over. That moment has moved on, right? In that same respect, Being emotional about it doesn't automatically give you the blue ribbon. So I say to people all the time, and being emotional and or stressing about a problem doesn't eliminate the problem. It just compounds the problem, and it freezes your objectivity. You suspend your objectivity. You can't make decisions when you're so emotionally jaded that you spend time contemplating a moment that has passed or dancing around with fears about events that haven't even happened, right? We create these circumstances oftentimes ourselves, not in every scenario, but oftentimes. And in that same respect, we oftentimes have the power to neutralize a lot of those monsters and to put things into perspective.
That is so true. And for those of you watching, if you would like to check out Khalid's book, you can go to Khalid. Take it away.
Oh, this is Amazon.com. Just search Khalid Bey, or search, for Khalid Bey, and put now after it, either or. And the book will show up along with some others. But for this purposes, Khalid Bey, and you should see it on the list of books there. And the book provides a lot more detail. I'll call it chronological detail, if you will, in terms of how we think about this subject matter that will make it, I think, in some ways more easier to understand than even our dialogue is now.
I agree. I agree because this you will read it over and over again, and then if you come back and catch the replay and watch it again, it will a lot of the things that the principles that we're talking about here will make sense. So Khalid, what right now, for example, what else can we offer our viewers to be present, to actually, because you did mention some of these principles are just going to get brushed off because they feel like they're so simple, and I did think that as well until I put it to practice and I felt its immediate effect.
Well, one of the things that's probably a little difficult to do or a little difficult to actually grasp is in the last chapter of the book, which is titled Now, where I challenge the person to keep their attention on this moment. Follow every word that I'm saying. Don't allow any other idea to enter your mind. Stay here. Don't think about nothing else. Don't feel anything else. Don't think about, keep your mind on my words. Keep your mind on the screen. Pay attention to every single word I'm saying, and now stop and give consideration to what, in addition, did you feel or think about while you were doing that. And you realize that you didn't feel anything. That's the magic of being present in the moment. It frees you from concerns, from fears. It releases you from all these containers or these preoccupations with things that may or may not have any real value. And the most important thing to understand is that you have the power to choose. And through our choices, I always state that the most important choices you make are the ones you make inside your head, not outside. How will you respond to the person who's being disrespectful, right? And when I used to work with these kids in this one high school program, I would give this example of a kid walking down the street and they glance to the right and they see another person that they don't know on a bus stop doing what we call in our community ice grilling them, right? Staring at them with a mean face, mean mugging them. There's two choices to be made there. One, you could turn back straight and keep walking. You don't know him. You'll probably never ever see him again. And that's just a split second in time. Or you can do what most people do, stare back, establish this staring relationship, and every single thing that that person has with them, you've now invited into your life. In that one split second.
Yes, I agree. I agree 100%. And that happens, let's say hello to a couple of people that we have, a couple of viewers, and then we'll go to. I witnessed this incredible, mindless accident that did not have to happen. So, hi, Eric. Thank you for being here. We have Dennis. Thank you for being here. And Gabe, how are you? How are you? This is Gabe's comment. Okay. History is our greatest teacher, and yet we ignore the past to learn how we can change our future.
That's a fact. We certainly learn not to repeat things that don't work, or, we should, right? But what's true, and we all know this, we don't learn. People repeat the same struggles over and over again. Let's just take stress and worry, right? How many times have the individuals on this who may be viewing this, or the people who may view it, have stressed over issues and then figured out that there was nothing to stress about, right? But that particular behavior is on repeat. And the problem is it happens with high frequency. So this is almost every day that people are creating monsters that don't exist, stressing about things that have no value. I'll this thing about myself. People always, I hear people talking. Right, I got to use this as an example too. I'll use myself. I'm the best example I have. Right, just like every person on this interview is the best example they have. Right, you and your experience is better than most people. Right, and so I'll use me as an example. As an elected official, I was called the greenest counselor, the greenest elected official in the city because I walked everywhere. I don't own a car. And I would hear people talk, or people would ask me directly, man, why you ain't got no car? Because in their mind, to have a car is to satisfy a standard that somebody told them they needed to satisfy. And I would respond in two ways. Not at saying, I would say either I don't own a car, but I own my house, right? Or I would simply say, because I don't need one. And what when you talk about the ideas that people have about what qualifies winning and or success, when you allow yourself to get trapped in that every time you don't succeed in your mind, whether it's on the front of your mind or in the back of your mind, the assumption is that you failed somehow. I don't assign to any of that foolery. You know what I mean? So my on the subject of houses and cars, I'll give you the response I give to people close to me when I laugh about this idea. A car depreciates with value and houses appreciate. You do the math. You can't live in no car. And the other thing, yeah, well, you can. But here's the other thing. I was watching this movie the other day, and this girl in the movie was going from couch to couch, friend to friend, family to family, but she had a car note. Go figure. I mean, she could have just paid some rent, and saved herself all the trouble.
Right.
Society has convinced people to engage in this kind of backward thought. And you don't, now I called it backward thought. It doesn't mean that it's backward thought. Once again, nobody has to listen to me. That's just what I call it, backward thought. The fact is, if you want to struggle and live in your car and all that, that's your right to do that. That's your right. You can do it however you want to do it. But don't complain about it. Own it. Enjoy the discomfort, the crampedness, the uncertainty of where you will lay down tomorrow. Own that, and you'll be a lot less stressful.
And that is the thing, though. That is the thing because there are a lot of people who do complain in their own right, right? Complain about their situation. And on the other side, I just hear it and I'm like, but you don't have to actually be in that situation, though.
And here's the thing, Anna. This is across the board. It happens most with relationship, but let's take any scenario that all of us got some vice we struggle with. Let's be clear: we're human beings. We're getting better as time progresses. Some of us at different paces than the other. But you get up and you sprint into a brick wall. You fall. You got a headache, and you complain about the headache. But then you do it again. You know what I mean? And the headache gets worse. But then you do it again. This is the average behavior of people. This is the average behavior of people who do this kind of thing. You know what I mean? And when I'm saying I'm talking, I'm going to go as far as to say 85% of the population on the planet is struggling with this kind of irregularity. You know, and until We become more conscious of the decisions we make and what the responses to those decisions would be. And as a result, make an adjustment. We'll continue to live those struggles. And to the point that Gabe made, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Pay attention to what happened, in the last moment you occupied. And if it was unsavory, try not to do that again.
Wait, what? Repeat that again, Khalid. What was it?
I was saying that if whatever you experienced in the last moment, and if you didn't like it, try not to do that again. Right? Don't repeat history that you don't like. Try something different. Go a different way. Wear something different. Put on a different cologne. Whatever it is, that'll be a new direction for you. If you were dissatisfied with the previous direction, then don't do the same things. I'll go back to a discussion I talked about in one of the other books where if a woman experienced abuse or a man experienced abuse in a past relationship, and the new person they meet, they see certain characteristics or personality traits expressed that's reminiscent of the last man or woman they dealt with, they probably should head for the hills, right? Because chances are you're repeating a similar situation, and we should at some point be able to see the signs and know how to make that necessary adjustment and make things ultimately a lot more peaceful for ourselves.
Yeah, and to that, you would think that is an easy thing to do, right? It relationships are, especially the ones that are not healthy relationships, is it's hard to leave these relationships because of the attachment that is, whether it is a good attachment or not, it is still an attachment, and attachments are one of the attachment is an
But
attachment,
well, no, it's fear.
right?
It's
It's fear
fear, right?
of
Fear causes the imprisonment. I'm not gonna
mm-hmm.
call it attachment. I'm gonna call it a shackle, right? It
Wait,
causes the
what are you gonna
imprisonment.
call it?
A shackle.
Okay.
People feel stuck. They feel stuck, but they're not gonna say they feel stuck. But innately, they're unhappy, right? They want to get away. If it's abusive, if it's verbally, physically, if it's verbally abusive, or if it's just like watching paint dry, that person is suffering for two reasons. One, for their own securities, which is selfish in itself, right? And then two, maybe they're trying not to upset or hurt the other person. Even still, not a great decision to make. There's even people who won't break up with somebody because they don't want their family, the other person's family, to be mad at them. Who cares? These are the kind of things that people are struggling with every day. I use relationship all the time as the example because everybody has one. So that's one thing we can certainly all relate to universally. And we've all made some goofy decisions during those times. And so when we learn to make right decision, not only right decision that is more progressive for us, but that's also not injurious to other people, we eventually get better at that. And our ability to manage our circumstances become greater. Life becomes a lot more stable, a lot more still, and a lot more peaceful.
Agree with it, and it is when we start questioning our beliefs and our values. It is when we start doing that work, that internal work, that we're able to discern when something is not good for us, and especially in relationships, because we're able to see there's so many things out there. There's so much information that has been downloaded to us about how and what a relationship should be, feel like, and all those things, that we stay in toxic relationships because we think that is the right thing. And
Well, it goes back to that statement I made in a previous interview on a red, green, blue. If the only words you know how to enunciate are red, green, or blue, then it doesn't matter what I ask you or what circumstances you're in, your response can only be red, green, or blue. And what we're talking about is what people have experienced, their parameters of understanding. Things that exist outside of their parameters of understanding don't exist to them. And so some people may believe that the struggle that they experience in their life and or in relationship, as an example, is supposed to be that way. There are people who believe that pain is a natural part of the relationship that you are to always endure, no matter how often it happens, right? Athletes know that would improve in their condition, there'll be some pain, but not to the extreme of tearing muscles and popping tendons, though. That's not intelligent, right? So, at what point, from a relationship perspective, a personal perspective, are we popping tendons and tearing muscles, right? We got to be, we have to take more responsibility. Another thing, we always like to pawn off the responsibility of our life and our choices on somebody else, right? Every person has will, and every person has the power to make decisions. And you have some who are in unfortunate circumstances where they don't have the power over their decision. And so I always make it clear that there are some cases where that does not exist. Small children, persons who are living with disabilities. Some people don't have the ability to make their own decision, and so they're at the whims of somebody else. But for the many others, the power to do that exists, and we have to have the courage to push forward no matter what.
And that is one important thing that you said, the courage to do it, because it does take courage. It takes a lot of it, and there's so many things, and there we have to take it one step at a time. And I do believe that if you want to be the author of your own life, you have to start with finding out who you are. Just find out. And it's like Khalid said, I'm not gonna tell you dreams, right? It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because you're going to have some memories that are going to come back. You're going to have some information that you have to go through and feel.
If I could add, let me use another scenario that many people are struggling with. Uh, the quest for more money. So you have people who have decent jobs or careers or whatever, and but they feel like they don't have enough, so they need more money, and so they go after more money, and they drive themselves crazy, going from job to job or career to career, because they're dissatisfied with their level of pay, right? Or even if the person gathers their money by some questionable means, they put themselves at a greater risk to acquire more money. All of this thing about money is because people believe that the value is in the paper. No, the value is in the commodity that the paper can buy, right? So the value, for example, is in the mug. The mug is worth a certain number of dollars. The dollar is the unit of measurement, like inches, right? 12 inches make a ruler. Well, if this is a $15 cup, $15 get you the cup. So the value is in the commodity, not the money. And so, but here's the thing that's interesting. Our desire to keep up with the Joneses, to satisfy societal standards about what life is supposed to be like, our preoccupation with athletes and rap videos and their lifestyle and their houses and their jewelry and clothes keeps people spinning themselves into the poorhouse. So instead of a person seeing the logic of, if I want better relief as it relates to my finances, maybe I need to better manage my expenses. That's way easier to do than for me to chase more money. And so, if I manage my expenses more effectively, let's be clear, with a person who stresses about bills, the very logic of working is to pay for your cost of living. So bills come with that, like you got skin on your body. It's a natural occurrence, right? And so you can't be mad about bills. If you're mad about a bill, then don't have the bill anymore. And if it's a utility, if it's a necessity, then manage how much of that energy you're using. And so people always chasing extra money instead of making a more intelligent decision and reducing their cost of living so they can create a cushion. This is what people struggle with next to relationship almost every day. And they create these problems for themselves. They destroy their marriages. They put their lives at risk and end up in prison and all kinds of crazy stuff because they want to chase the Joneses and live these very immaculate lives, where they believe that the money in itself has the value. It's just bad decision making, and it's just tough ideas that people need to get over. It's all relative to how we've been conditioned to think and the things that we've been conditioned to assign value. You need to reassess your values and make better choices.
Khalid, listen, that was gold. That was gold, and it is true. Like, there are so many things that I had to rearrange in my life, not in terms of um, not in terms of finances, but in terms of what do I want to do when I release a lot of the values that were not mine, right? So, for example, where I grew up, it was okay, you have your house, you have to have it really nice and pretty, and you have to have the clothes like this, and you have to have, and it wasn't me. It wasn't me at all. So, but I was living somebody else's because that's how I grew up or that's what I saw. But then when I realized that that wasn't what I wanted, that it was becoming, I'm an adult now. I can do whatever I want, right? So then it went that way and I'm just living it like, okay, I'm travel. So instead of spending money on something that I really don't like, a piece of furniture that is like, oh my gosh, so people can say, wow, I'm traveling. So I'm using that money to travel, right? So it is those decisions that go towards our happiness, towards our purpose, towards what we want to do because it's our lives and we're the ones who have to live it and be happy with it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and let's be clear about what the message is, right? We're not saying that people shouldn't be comfortable. Whatever comfortable is for you, you have the right to be whatever you want to be, even if you choose to be uncomfortable. But what I'm saying is, if you create a circumstance that is trying, consider the start of that sentence. You created the circumstance, right? Which means you could easily make choices to adjust, even if it's in the meantime. People have the right to chase whatever dreams and wealth or whatever they want, however they want. I always say, for as long as you don't injure anybody else. But the key thing is to own your choices. That's the key thing. Own the fact that you made that decision. Own the fact that you decided to go on a trip instead of paying your mortgage, and then own the fact that you're going to get penalized or possibly lose your insurance and be in default next month. Own that. Don't act as if somebody did something to you or get mad at the bank when they threaten you with foreclosure after only 1 month of failing to pay your mortgage. Right? That is the rules. That's how it works. Be aware of the choices you make and own them, or make the right choice and pay your mortgage and forego the trip.
Well, thankfully, I know because I'm not buying a tons of furniture anymore. Have money to go travel, so and pay the mortgage. Those are the decisions that we have to make, right? Just like decisions that just alter the
Well,
decisions. But
it's an example of decisions we make that we fear the repercussions for tomorrow, right? The person who chooses to go on the trip instead of paying their mortgage is worrying about their mortgage the whole time.
right, that's true. So
They're
they're not even
worried
enjoying
about the
their.
penalty coming, but they set that in motion. They control that circumstance, right? The person who robs the bank is worrying the whole time about getting caught, right? This is a thing that we know is true, but we still do these things anyway. We create the circumstances and then we blame everybody else for our choices. Come on, own what we do. Let's own what we do, and as a result, take control over what we do and try to become better architects
Yep.
as
That
measuring
is
land.
true. Khalid, this has been a great conversation as always. And before we say goodbye to Khalid, you guys, if you have any questions or comments for Khalid or for myself, write them in the comments so that we can address them before we end the show. Or we can come, you can watch the replay and write your comments, and we will come back and answer them for you as well. Also, as I mentioned before, if you would like to be a guest on the show, you can send me an email at officiallyunofficialtv@gmail.com, officiallyunofficialtv@gmail.com for consideration. We come live every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So, Khalid, any last minute
Well, I'm
thoughts?
certainly, yeah, yeah. Just to go back to the beginning of the discussion. When we're talking about polarity, it's just the establishment of the fact that there are choices, there are opposites, right? That either validate or discredit one another. And there's a middle space in between those choices, right? When we talk about shadow time in the second chapter, we're talking about the fact that yesterday and tomorrow are things that are intangible. You can't hold them, you can't touch them. We're not reckless in our management of the moment, though, which is what assures how our tomorrow will be. And so to be active in today guarantees us a better tomorrow, if you will. And these are the things that we have to understand, that it does you no service to sit in the moment stressing and worrying, and then the very thing you're stressing and worrying about, you create with inactivity. You create with the lack of decision or with indecision. Don't trap yourself off and then act as if you don't know how you got there. Let's be active. Let's make decisions. Let's take advantage of the moment.
And that's exactly what the book is about. It is a very quick read, and you'll be able to read it over and over again. You will want to read it over and over again because the principles mentioned are very good, and you will have to think about it, think about it, and think about it. It's just, yeah, you guys should just check it out. All I have to say, Khalid, you are an amazing author and definitely an amazing speaker. Thank you so much for being here and explaining all of these great principles with us. And if there's one thing that I took out of our conversation today, was just staying in the moment, was own our decisions wherever they are, just whatever they are. So we own them, and we're the only person that we have to answer to when it comes to that. And also, if we're not hurting anyone, just go on and live our lives the way that we were supposed to. And just like you said, Khalid, right? Everybody wants and deserves a life of success and prosperity, right?
That's right.
So that's the way to get it, will be
That's
being
your
present
choice.
in the moment, right?
Right.
Participate. Participate. Khalid, if they want to get a hold of you, how do they connect with you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook. Just look up Khalid Bey. On Facebook, Khalid Bey 315 specifically. Khalid Bey is my name on Twitter. Same thing on uh, Instagram, LinkedIn. It's all the same. You can find me, message me, contact me those ways. And again, you can find any of the books mentioned here, or this book and any other book. Sorry about that. On Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other book.com you probably could think of. And hopefully you'll consider checking them out.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here with us. And hopefully, we will be seeing you next Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Ana Gil, and you're watching Officially Unofficial TV.